Surupam Daiva Rupetam Ahadhaiva Vasad Apetam Pasuyata Parikritam Dhiramadhan Daha Deham material body Cha and Tam that Na not Charamaha last Stitam sitting Utitam rising Ba or Siddhaha the realized soul Vipassiti can conceive Yataha because Adhyagamat he has achieved Surupam his real identity Daivat according to destiny Upetam arrived Atha moreover Daiva Vasat according to destiny Apetam departed Vasaha clothing Yatha as Parikritam put on Madhira Mada Andaha one who is blinded by intoxication because he has achieved his real identity. The perfectly realized soul has no conception of how the material body is moving or acting, just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether or not he has clothing on his body. Of course, if you're going to spread Krishna consciousness in this world, you cannot allow yourself to forget about your body. Otherwise, you could be walking around naked and not notice. Purport. This stage of life is explained by Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. A person whose mind is completely dovetailed with the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who engages 100% in the service of the Lord forgets his material bodily demands. Yeah. He forgets, or, a slightly lower stage, he tolerates. The bodily demands are not dictating, but he's dictating what the body does. The body's not dictating what he does. And what's referred to in this verse is that he's transcendentally situated, and he may forget that he actually has a body, which is interesting. For us, anyway, how could you forget you have a body? So the example is if a person is intoxicated. Maybe if you're intoxicated enough, you become oblivious to your body. So, yeah. Anyway, at least I think one thing we can understand, we're pretty oblivious to our soul. Let's just switch the equation around.
Other way around.
Yeah. We're oblivious to our soul and conscious of our body. They're oblivious to their body, conscious of their soul. That's where they're situated. But as I said, in order to preach Krishna consciousness, they won't remain on that platform because they wouldn't function. They wouldn't be able to function properly if they were always transcendental. Like sometimes I joke that the symptoms of bhava develop for one who is a pure devotee. So when they chant, their body shakes, they're crying, they're choking. So my joke is, if you're on the stage of bhava, don't chant and drive, because you could go into ecstasy and transcend and forget you're driving, right? I could forget everything on this plane. But sometimes that happens. And sometimes we saw with Prabhupada that he would kind of leave this plane, and then he would just stop whatever he was doing, speaking or singing, and just stop. Occasionally would apologize. So sometimes he couldn't control it, but it's not something that you normally do. So it said the Mahabhagavad, they will come to the second class platform to preach. So they're kind of sometimes appearing ordinary, just like us. And not exactly like us. I think with Prabhupada, sometimes he kind of went in and out a little bit. Not that he lost touch with the external environment, but just sometimes went way more internal with Krishna than we could ourselves do. And if you look at my japa books, and the cover shows Prabhupada chanting, and you can see he's not really on the material plane just by looking at that picture. You could see he's really with Krishna. And if you hear Prabhupada chanting, it definitely sounds like he's not. He's with Krishna when he's chanting. He's not really here. You can hear it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. There's like nothing. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Ram. It's just him and Krishna. You can hear it. So that's something to look forward to. Just you and Krishna. Someday. Nothing else. At the same time, as we saw with Prabhupada, that he dedicated his life for spreading Krishna consciousness. So we saw that also with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, completely dedicated. But sometimes something would arouse some sentiment or emotion, and they lost control, even in public. It's rare, but it happens. So, but generally, the pure devotee is, he's got to be on this plane to deal with us, but he can go off this plane. He's like on it and not on it, but to deal with us, he has to be on it. And I find it so interesting. You say Prabhupada is a transcendental personality. The Goswamis are transcendental personalities. They were so attentive to what they were doing, the mission they had. Jiva Goswami was establishing the mission. Goswamis were excavating Vrindavan, of course. Bhaktivinoda, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, just spreading a mission and just having to work on this plane with all the details that everyone has to work with when they're trying to do something, trying to establish an organization, whether it's spiritual or not. And they're, it's like these are transcendental personalities descended from the spiritual world, and here they are in this world, building temples, establishing institutions, bylaws. It's very interesting, isn't it? Establishing, like Jiva Goswami establishing the League of Devotees, and and further acharyas coming, writing books, saving manuscripts. They're dealing with this realm that they're not even a part of, have nothing to do with. But that's the service Krishna has given them. So they'll come to this. They'll deal on this level. You could say, well, for a pure devotee, they'd rather just be hearing and chanting all day, and that's it, and remaining in a transcendental position. But it's not what Krishna wants them to do, and it's not what they come here to do. So in that sense, they make sacrifice. And Prabhupada told us that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, whenever a devotee wanted to just chant, he would say, no, go out, preach. That's the mission. Go out and preach. Don't be a Babaji. Don't just sit and chant. So you could just sit and chant and be transcendental, but that's not what they advocated. And even Prabhupada didn't do that, even at a time in his life when he could have done it, which is his last days. That would have been the natural, or the last month or two, that would have been the natural time for him to retire, go into samadhi. Although other acharyas have done that. But he didn't do that. Bhaktisiddhanta didn't do that. They continued preaching. And, even when Prabhupada knew he wasn't going to live, still he's thinking about the organization, putting everything in order, giving instructions, very much on this level. Which you would think that's the time you would just forget it, He didn't. And then, as we know, Prabhupada was translating his books practically to his last breath, which was his service to his Guru Maharaj, and he never gave it up. He could have, but it is said Prabhupada's preaching was his bhajan, so that was Prabhupada's samadhi, in a sense. Prabhupada said, you work now, you'll take samadhi later, you'll go into samadhi later. But Prabhupada's samadhi was spreading Krishna consciousness, manifestation of his compassion. Right? So he was right here with us. He could be transcendental, translating his books and chanting his japa, but when he was with us, he was right with us. And that's the sacrifice of the pure devotee. And not only was he with us, but look what he was dealing with. Look at the kind of people he had to deal with, and look at the problems he had to deal with, and the various challenges he faced in trying to spread Krishna consciousness in America, which was an unlikely place to do it. It was so difficult. And he was right here on this plane, dealing with it wisely and guiding people wisely. It's very interesting. Anyway, I find it interesting that someone who's so transcendental also has such practical knowledge of how to deal with the world. So, any questions on that or comments?
So, Prabhuji, sadhana and compassion, self-compassion and the compassion towards others. In the medical field also, we have self-compassion. The doctors are compassionate towards the patients, but at the certain time, they have to be compassionate for their own self, because otherwise there is a burnout issue, a lot of burnout issues among the doctors.
You call it compassion fatigue?
Compassion fatigue, probably. So similarly, there's a separate course for the doctors called self-compassion.
Oh, nice.
You have to understand that you have certain compassion towards yourself also, before you put distribute the compassion. So similarly in spiritual life also, like should we be compassionate towards our soul, towards oneself, before we become start distributing the compassion.
We should. But the interesting thing about it, Prabhupada said, save yourself first, then save others. But it's a little different than I think what a doctor experiences, because sometimes part of saving yourself is to save others, because it helps you. I'm going to go out and distribute Prabhupada's books. Why? I might say, well, you're so compassionate, and you might say, no, I'm doing this for myself. I know it's going to help them, but I need to do it. So that's there also. So we take care of ourselves through sadhana. We get enough rest, take care of our health, take care of our emotional well-being, and then we give Krishna consciousness. But that giving also helps us. Mm-hmm. It's also part of our self-compassion program.
Absolutely.
I had a nightmare the other night, and my nightmare was I was in some situation and I couldn't preach Krishna consciousness, and I was in total anxiety. I said, I can't live like this. I have to teach. And I lived in Mayapur for 6 years, and periodically I would go out and people would say, why are you leaving the Dham? I said, I'm leaving the Dham because I need to go out and preach. So I visit other temples in India for my own well-being. So that's there also.
Absolutely. Like preaching also involves a lot of austerities, and like you're visiting so many places,
Yes.
and I have little experience of that, not to the extent what you have, like staying at different places and
Yeah.
getting used to the different environment, and facilities are not the same, and food is
No,
not the
they're
same,
not, no.
and there's a lot of stress on your body and your mind
Yeah.
and your family at the same time, and
Yes.
economics, and so many things are
Yes.
involved.
Yes.
So if we have that type of fatigue, which involves a lot of physical price to be paid for the same, so
We'll burn out though
burnout, yeah.
if we're not. So I'll give an example. I think most devotees my age have already burned out, so they don't burn out anymore because they know how to burn out. And so once you know how to burn out, you know how not to burn out. You know what to do to not burn out. So I think most of devotees my age burned out when we were younger. And of course, when you get older, you have to take more care of your health because your machine doesn't work well if you don't.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, when you're young, you don't take care of it, it still works well. It's like a new car. So, yeah. So we've kind of learned the hard way. That's for sure.
Like here it mentioned that a person whose mind is completely dotted with the desire of supreme personality of Godhead and who engages 100% in the service of Lord forgets his material bodily demands.
Yeah.
So bodily demands are always there. But it says this stage is explained by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So what is that stage
Well,
called as?
you look at the Goswamis. They're very.
Yeah, they were.
The thing is, like Prabhupada had diabetes and he'd eat sugar, and he's only sleeping like 3 hours at night. So how many people could function with diabetes and eat sugar and sleep 3 hours? And so only those who realize they're not the body. It's like, okay, my body is tired or whatever, the insulin problem, whatever, blood sugar is up, down, and you just keep going, so it's, my perception of Prabhupada is like, he didn't allow his body, as little as possible, did his body dictate. He's like, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to do it.
Mind over body.
Very much, yeah. But like the Goswamis, they're transcendental living entities. So they could also not really take care of themselves. Just that time that they could have taken care of themselves, they don't want to waste because they could be doing service, but they could do that. It wasn't an impediment to their service. And if we did that, it would be an impediment. And say, I'm so weak, I'm underweight, malnourished, I can't function, I can't think straight. But sometimes it's said that their energy was not coming from what they were eating. It was coming from a different source. So they could function even without, but you can't imitate that.
Yes. So I mean, if you take care of the body, you can serve probably longer and better, probably.
Well, younger devotees thought like burnout was synonymous with surrender. So it's almost like they'd go for burnout. Like, let's just go longer hours, sleep less, eat less, keep working. And because you see that example with the pure devotees, that's the example that Prabhupada said. He's going, not stopping. So we thought, okay, well, that's the example. So it was almost like subconsciously, if we hit burnout, it was like, yeah, jackpot. I burned out in Krishna's service. And, when you burn out and you're young, you recuperate fast. You don't even know you're burned out. You just take a little nap and you're fine. Take a day off, but it doesn't work when you're older.
There is various levels of burnout. Like some people get mental disturbances also, which cannot recuperate quickly. So
especially you're neglecting your needs.
Yeah.
You're neglecting the needs that would keep you normally functioning physical. I mean, it's also neglecting spiritual needs if we don't hear and chant enough.
Like physical, mental, familial,
Yeah,
financial,
yeah,
so many aspects. Like
yeah,
one can burn out oneself,
yeah,
but not the family probably, or other aspects probably. But when you have taken a ashram,
yeah.
then one has to.
Yeah, you can burn your family out also. If you're overworking, you're not around, so then burn them out. I think that the answer is it has to be adjusted according to the individual. Like how much can you do?
Mhm.
And so if you do too much, you end up neglecting other responsibilities. So the idea is 24 hours devotional service. But what may be misunderstood is your job is also devotional service. Your family is also devotional service. So if you think it's not, then you would neglect those in the name of 24-hour service, and you would see your job and family as impediments because it has nothing to do with Krishna. That's the mistake.
Yeah, balanced approach is required.
So people say, like, how do I balance my material and spiritual life? I say, for a devotee, there's no material life. Don't see it that way.
Yeah.
It's not, if you see it that way, you're not seeing it properly. Of course, we understand what by material we think, well, it's, washing my clothes, going to work, taking care of my physical needs is material. But if you're a devotee and everything, and your mentality is everything is for Krishna, then all that is just done to support your service. So that in one way or another, it is service. So there is no service, not service. That's if you have the mentality, everything for Krishna. Why am I cooking? Because I have to eat. Why do you need to eat? Because I need to live. Why do you need to live? To serve.
So what is the stage called as? It says this stage of life as explained by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Is there any name to this stage, like where we forget the bodily identity?
Well, as I remember describing nectar devotion in different, states of ecstasy, and ecstatic love, then you're like, you're just lost. Krishna,
Yes.
But it's not Mahaprabhu exhibited it. But if you see in the Leelas, his devotees don't externally exhibit it, and that's an injunction that you don't do that. Like one time, devotee said, Prabhupada, when I'm in kirtan, I can't stop crying. Prabhupada said, that's good, just don't cry in public. It's like you don't advertise yourself as, and you miss. Then everybody starts crying, and you're the only one with Bob, and everyone else is crying in imitation. So you don't want to establish that standard, false standard. But if one is on the level of bhava and they're experiencing ecstatic symptoms, and they don't control them, then that's what happens. But pretty much, have you read about, like you read about Narada Muni, like he doesn't know, sometimes he doesn't know he has a body. But when you read about the Goswamis, you read about their austerities, but you don't read about them just transcending and falling on the ground as Mahaprabhu did. Isn't it? Yeah, because as preachers, they're trying to be examples. So that's not the example that they need to set for the average person. Falling over and crying is not an example that anyone can follow. And if they follow it, it's imitation. So they don't do that. They set practical examples: reducing, eating, sleeping, doing service. So we don't see this so much, but at any moment they can go to that plane, and it's like Nectar Devotion says, for these liberated souls, they have their connection with Krishna, and they can go off in that while they're here, but they could be in both at the same time. Seemed like that with Prabhupada, when he would chant Jai Radha Madhava. It didn't seem like he was actually here. And then he'd chant and finish Jai Om Vishnupad and give the class, and seemed like he's right here. And he's giving the class, and one class, he choked up in one class because he was talking about I forget what he was talking about, how much Krishna loves his devotee or something. It was just, kind of went off.
Mm.
And, in the last days when Prabhupada wasn't eating, and the doctor said, there's nothing to protect. There's no flesh.
Mm.
So just whatever's there is
One.
it's rubbing the bones, and it's very painful. He said ordinary people couldn't tolerate it, and Prabhupada wasn't complaining. So actually we could say he was in quite a transcendental position at the time of death, but still conscious on this level.
Is that the prema stage? When you
Che-
forget yourself? Like he says, the stage is explained by Rupa Goswami.
Yeah.
Is that a
Well,
final stage like a prema where you forget?
Generally, it's explained that prema cannot exist in a material body. So the body could tolerate bhava, those ecstasies of bhava.
That's bhava.
And then you go to Krishna Lila, and then you get prema, and then go back to Godhead. At least that's one explanation, that the power of prema is too intense for a material body to embody it. You have to have a spiritual body. Then
So this stage is bhava or prema?
yeah, I would say that's bhava, yeah. If we go with this conception that the material body cannot handle prema, then it's bhava. This is the ecstasies of bhava. Bhava is just the beginning stage of love, where these ecstasies manifest. Because of the intensity of love, as you know, when emotion's very intense, they're physical symptoms.
So to reach to the stage of bhava, like Adho Sattva, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivrutti, and then the bhava.
Nishta, Ruchi, Sakti, Bhava. How do we get there?
Yeah.
Chanka Japa.
Yes.
Here, Bhagavatam associated with devotees. I think one thing that slows it down is offenses. Not that I think, I know. So, if we're moving slowly, that's always a good place to look. Am I critical of devotees? Am I minimizing something? Am I in some way, am I not chanting properly? Am I offending the holy name? Am I not introspective, internal? Maybe it's there. It's got to be, if we're not progressing steadily, if some attraction is not gradually developing, then at some point, if you've been a devotee for so many years and you feel like, I'm just not attached to Krishna, I see the deities and it's like, okay, I'm not feeling something. I chant and I don't feel much. I read Bhagavatam, I don't feel much. There's probably some offenses blocking it.
So offenses can be like offense against the devotees, offense against the holy name, and offense against
Deities and Dham.
deities and Dham. So how do we
No, for
avoid
making.
one at a time or all at a time? Or is there any one thing, if we do and avoid all the offenses, like watering the root?
Yeah, it's called humility. Just do humility. That's the cause of criticism and blasphemy, is a lack of humility. And offenses in deity worship can be accidental, which is different than like you don't care. And offending the Dham means not respecting the Dham as what the Dham is, or committing sin within the Dham. That would be offense in deity worship also, engaged in sinful activity while you're worshiping the deity. And, just not executing it properly, the seva. But the most common one is the criticism and offense of devotees. And so humility is the panacea for criticism, because humility causes you to respect devotees. And pride causes us, not you, pride causes us to offend devotees, humility causes us to respect devotees.
So, like to avoid offense, one should be aware of the offense. Like, if a traffic light, if we know there is a traffic light, then we will probably stop.
Yeah, well, the basic offense, the big offense with amongst devotees is to lie about them, like you. Last night, Prem Kishore was out with another woman, so that's a lie, and I post that, right? Actually, he was outside the temple preaching to a woman for 5 minutes, and he came back, and he was out all night with a woman. I saw a woman there. They must have been on a date or something. That's called blasphemy. Blasphemy is when you say something that's not true. So that's the big offense. Criticism may be necessary. Prem Kishore did this. It's not right. He shouldn't have done that. And everybody knows that nobody should do it. And I tell him, he says, I'm sorry, yes, I shouldn't have done it. That's not really criticism. That's just correction. There's no ill feeling. But criticism is like, well, he's such a this or that. He doesn't know this or that. He's a fool. Did you hear his class? That's not considered blasphemy per se. That's considered criticism, which we all do from time to time. But that should be eliminated also. But specifically, blasphemy is what could destroy you. Criticism is more subtle. It just slows you down a bit. It's a manifestation of pride. It's something to be aware of. But blasphemy is like a disease. Like, I'm trying to put you down. I'm trying to demean you in the public eye. That's vicious. So that's beyond, that's vengeance and viciousness.
It's like an enviousness leading to blasphemy.
Yes. So, Hare, come here.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
But criticism can lead to blasphemy. So, but it's said that a pure devotee doesn't have he doesn't criticize and doesn't have a tendency to criticize. So he's not fighting a tendency to criticize. That's because of his extreme humility. When you manifest humility, you respect, you appreciate. So that is the prevention from committing Vaishnava aparadha. And criticism is unhealthy also. So we need to work on that. And by appreciating, respecting devotees, cultivating practices of humility like that, it removes a big obstacle in our bhakti, and that's an obstacle to chanting properly. Because if I'm criticizing devotees, it's going to affect my chanting. It's like, why is my chanting not good? Maybe you're criticizing, maybe you can't. Why is my mind all over the place? Maybe you're making offenses to the deities. Who knows? Generally, if you look at what offenses are, to me, my understanding is you're not seeing the spiritual nature of something. And so you're dealing with it like it's just something ordinary. So I deal with the holy name like it's ordinary. It's just a material sound. I deal with the devotee like they're ordinary. I deal with the deity like they're ordinary, or the Dham, and I treat it like it's an ordinary material thing. That's where offenses will come. They're not worship. These are items that are worshipable, but I don't treat them like that. I treat them like it's just ordinary something. It's just a statue. It's not Krishna. It's just a sound. It's nothing. It's just a process with the sound. It's a Vaishnava, offense to a Vaishnava. Oh, he's from a low caste family, or he's committed sins in his past. So you make judgments on that. That's also criticism, and often we're criticizing because we want to look good. So criticism could also be a means of inflating our ego, which is obviously for doing these things, it's like, how well can you chant if that's your mentality? So, we say aparads can be problematic, but what's really problematic is the mentality that caused the aparad. Because if you heal that, then there won't be aparad. So aparad is like the effect, and so you're going to get a reaction for the effect. And Jiva Goswami said, you may have ill feelings for a devotee, but just don't speak it. Because once you speak it, it's going to hurt that devotee, and then it's just a mess. Obviously you shouldn't have ill feelings for anybody, but at least if you don't verbalize them and you try to control it, then you're doing what you can. And then as you become purified, the tendency to criticize, you'll realize where it's coming from. It's coming from your pride. It's coming from your need to feel better, or your need to look better, or your need to distinguish yourself as a better devotee. And when you realize that when I'm criticizing, the problem is not with the devotee, the problem is with me, because I don't have to criticize him. There's no injunction that I criticize this devotee unless I'm his teacher or guru. Maybe I have to correct, but that's not criticism, that's correction. So there's no need to criticize anybody other than my own need to distinguish myself as being better. So that's, so we should always look for the source of the problem. If you see a manifestation, just go back. Why? What's causing me to do that? Why do I treat a devotee this way? Why am I chanting this way? What's the problem? Because in bhakti, we advance by getting mercy. So if I offend the holy name, then I don't get mercy of the holy name. If I offend the devotee, I don't get mercy of the devotee. If I offend the deity, I don't get mercy of the deity. I offend the Dham, I don't get mercy of the Dham. And I need the mercy desperately. And so mercy picks you up. And so, oh Gurudev, please give me your mercy. Kripa Bindu Diya. Just a drop, I need some. And if I offend, then the mercy, the dam of mercy, it's closed, it's stopped. And I don't get any mercy. And if I don't get any mercy, I can't advance. What to speak, if I offend, that not only do I not get mercy, but then it's like opposite, it's negative. So it's like mercy brings you up, offense pushes you down, pushes you. Aparad distances you from Radha, distances you from service and worship. So not only, it's not neutral, it's pushing you away. So sometimes a devotee will leave, and a lot of people kind of knew they were going to leave because they were very critical. And we just knew if he continues this way, that offense will then neutralize his ability to serve, and he'll have no desire to serve.
So maybe to avoid all the 4 different kinds of offenses, deity offense, namaprad, or offending to a devotee, or dhamaprad. So maybe we need to little slow down, and before we say or do something, just contemplate whether this is going to take me towards Krishna or away from Krishna, probably, and then we may be able to avoid some of those. Probably slowing down may help.
Well,
Think before you do, probably.
I think that is useful, but also the problem is deeper. Because, as I said, well, if we slow down, okay, I'm chanting the holy name. This is Krishna. If I honor the holy name as Krishna, that is the way I won't make offenses. When I don't honor the name as Krishna, I'm likely to make offenses because I take it as just an ordinary sound. And then, I just have to chant my rounds, so I just chant it.
Finish it off.
Yeah, but I don't chant it as this is Krishna. So I'm not really worshiping the holy name. I'm not really praying to the holy name. I'm not honoring the sound as non-different from Krishna, sound incarnation. So the same thing, obviously, with the devotee. Oh, he's just a Oh, I know him. He comes from this city in India. Those people there, they're all like this. And I know his family. He comes from this caste. But actually, he's a great devotee. But I'm not seeing that. I'm minimizing that. Same with the deity. Oh, it's just stone. I don't believe in all of this. How can Krishna be there? So that's where you have to start, because if you see something as material, then you will engage with it as something material. If you see something as spiritual, you will respect it properly. So Vaishnav, you can't serve Krishna directly, you have to serve his devotee. Krishna doesn't let you go directly. So most important thing is love your guru, love the devotees. It starts there. And so we should love the devotees. Instead of loving them, I criticize them because I take them for granted. I don't see them as tadiya, in relation to Krishna, as the devotees are part of Krishna's entourage, his paraphernalia. So if anything I see is material, I'll deal with it materially, and that means I will minimize it in some way.
As an administrator, like say, you get disappointed with somebody,
Yes,
and then you might say something because
Yes.
you are disappointed now,
yes, yes,
and that might offend someone.
yes.
So then, does that affect our progress?
Yeah, it does. The way it's explained is that, as I was saying, blasphemy is like high-grade criticism. It's just like sometimes we criticize. It's just like, oh, did you see Anand Prabhu? He ate like 48 chapatis yesterday. What a pig. And so we're just kind of like joking. But of course, a more advanced devotee wouldn't say that. But a lot of the criticism comes out as joking, or we're just frustrated. I made those 48 chapatis, to feed 24 devotees, and he ate them all himself. So you're just frustrated, like, what's he thinking? Like, what's wrong with him? That kind of thing. So I forgot what you were asking.
So question is, sometimes we have to be a little stricter.
You're dealing as administration, yeah.
And then that
Okay.
might offend someone.
Yeah. So yeah, and if it maybe your just intention is just to help and it offends them. So that's also
We're just following the rules, regulations.
Yeah.
So like we
Prabhu,
say,
you need to do this. And like,
you
don't
need to
tell me what to
you're doing,
do.
and then, oh, he's offended now.
Yeah.
You're telling me
Yeah.
again and again.
Okay. So so we've made a distinction between criticism and blasphemy. So criticism is not going to destroy you. Blasphemy is criticism, it's not good. It'll interfere with, your ability to execute pure bhakti. So you don't want to do it, but it's not going to destroy you. Blasphemy is where you get into that destruction realm, especially when you blaspheme a Mahabhagavad. That's like, so we see in Shastra, once you do that, it's like,
You're done.
your bhakti is like stopped now.
Yeah.
If you blaspheme a second-class devotee, it's bad, but not as. If you blaspheme a brand new devotee, it's bad, not as bad. So blasphemy of the higher devotee, that's
Done.
bad. We see sometimes people have lost faith in Prabhupada and criticize her. He said this, and how could he say that? And say, well, he comes from that generation, and they're all like misogynists, and they accuse Prabhupada of being misogynist, or something like that. And those people, you just see they
Disappear.
like whatever. They don't necessarily disappear. Some of them hang around and just keep criticizing.
Oh.
It's like whatever they understood about bhakti, it's like it gets covered. So you see that, and then you sometimes see that in the name of serving Prabhupada, they're criticizing his dearest devotees, dearest disciples. And so they kind of lose, with that blasphemy, they lose their intelligence a bit. These are just things I've observed. So if you are in a position of administration, sometimes you'll have to instruct, people won't like it. Is it an offense if they get offended? You could say yes, but everything in bhakti is about your intention. So if your intention is to help somebody and they get upset, it's not really that you're offensive, even though but it's not good for the relationship, and it's not good that they've taken offense. And it could disrupt your japa one day, and you're just chanting, "Oh, this devotee doesn't like me, and I offended him, and I was just trying to help him," and but it's not like going to destroy your bhakti. And that's just part of the austerity of being in charge. The challenge of being in charge is you have to see what devotees are doing, and you have to discuss when they're making mistakes. You have to discuss it, either with them or another group or both. So your heart always has to be in the mood of, I'm a humble servant, and I don't think I'm better. I'm just trying to help. Because if you're in a position of a guru, whether Diksha or Siksha, or some kind of mentor, then often you have to correct. But you have to correct from the position of like, I'm serving you, not from the position that I'm better.
Authority.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, so all this, do you have any questions?
I would just say, if it's not your fault, and still if someone criticizes you, and in that case, there would be a chance that you might feel something about them, right? Like if
course,
it's a senior
of course.
devotee and
Yeah.
he criticizes you because
Yeah.
and you didn't did anything wrong or intentionally wrong,
Yes.
then in that case, what to do? Like, would that be because you will
Yeah.
feel right that he's a senior devotee, but in your mind you will still think like, how can he tell this to me, or in front of everyone, how can he criticize? So in that situation, how we can just make our mind stable that again he's a senior devotee, so we have to still respect him.
There are ways to do it, but I can't say it's always going to be easy. When we're criticized, we can think, well, Krishna sent this person to make me humble. Even if they're wrong, it's just like, I think I'm so great. So sometimes it's humbling if someone just tells you something's wrong with you, but it's not even true. It just kind of reminds you that you're not perfect, or at least people don't see me as like the way I see myself. Another angle you can take is that, well, maybe it's right. Let me think. It doesn't seem right, but that's what he thinks. Another angle is maybe he's just, disturbed. And it's not really about what you do. He's just disturbed. It's like he needs to criticize. That's where he's at. And I see that a lot. I see that some people, they actually need to criticize. It's kind of like their nature. I was just thinking about this yesterday. I'm trying to recall exactly what I was thinking, but it's kind of like a mission. It's like they're wired to see what's wrong. They're wired to look at something from a certain angle.
Yeah.
Like they're on a certain mission. They see everything this way. So even things which may not be entirely wrong, or maybe not even wrong at all, they're like wired. It's like my mission is to see what's wrong with everything. Like if you want to go around this temple room with me, and I'll tell you what's wrong. Like, you give me that job, I can do it. But I wouldn't normally, like if Prem Kishore says, it's like, well, what do you think's wrong? And I go, I don't know. You must have seen something. And I said, well, I guess if you want, I can look and see. Let's go around and see. It's not my nature to do that, but someone else's nature, as soon as he asks, immediately he'll tell him. Because that's like their mission in life is to find out what's wrong with everyone. But when you're cultivating bhakti, that's antithetical to bhakti. Because your mission is not to find fault. Your mission is to serve and respect. There is a place for finding fault when it's your service. Then it becomes different. Because like if it's not my service, I don't do it. So if my service is to help you, then I will see what you're doing wrong and tell you. If that's not my service, I might say, Prem Kishore, I saw him doing this, maybe you want to tell him. It's like not my mission in life to correct you. I don't get any pleasure from that. So if someone has that nature where they feel my mission in life is to see what's wrong with everything, it's not, it can be useful to a certain degree, but beyond a certain degree, it's going to have bad effects on them because they'll be living in a world which is very critical of devotees, and there's nowhere where we're instructed that we should just always be seeing what's wrong with devotees. In fact, we're instructed not to, unless that's our service. Then there's an interesting story. There was a devotee, and he epitomized envy because he would invite devotees to take lunch and he would make them eat too much. And then he would spread the news that these sannyasis are overeating or they're bogus. So he really, it was like the far end epitome of envy, where you actually get somebody to do something so you could criticize them. And he even did that with Lord Chaitanya. Because, this is a good example. Because sannyasis traditionally sannyasis should be very austere. And one thing they shouldn't do is eat sweets. That's like considered like a no-no for a renunciate. Not that Prabhupada didn't eat sweets, but in that time and culture, that was what people considered. If someone was a sannyasi, they would eat very simply. So this devotee, this envious devotee, found that there were ants in Mahaprabhu's room. He said, aha, Mahaprabhu's eating sweets. So Prabhupada said, there's ants everywhere. Eating the sweets or no sweets, there's ants everywhere. So, but this person, his bent is always to find what's wrong. So whatever he sees, he comes to a conclusion that there's a fault here. So some people are more inclined that way by nature. It's just how they were born. But it doesn't help when you're a devotee unless you can employ that in finding out faults that you can correct without offending people. But just to live to see what's wrong, and to live to look at the devotees and just find fault and laugh at them, make fun of them. That's not the mentality we're trying to cultivate. It's just completely opposite of the mood of a devotee. We're trying to cultivate humility, which means seeing what's good in somebody. Not easy. And we weren't generally born that way. We didn't come to this world to respect people. We came to dominate them. That's why we're here. We are here to be number one. We're not here to put everyone above us. But a pure devotee puts everyone above. Even he puts his disciples above. He said, oh, you're all doing better than I am. You're a better devotee than I am. In extreme humility, that's how they'll feel. I mean, you can't imitate that. But that's the extreme humility of a pure devotee. So it's quite the opposite of this conditioned nature where we're always putting people down just because we need to be right or we need to feel better. And where I think where it gets dangerous is that we're doing it in the name of our guru. I'm chastising you in the name of Prabhupada. Sometimes, yes, we know what Prabhupada wanted and you're not doing it, and we may say that. But sometimes it gets extreme where you're just like criticizing everything and everyone, even that Prabhupada wouldn't criticize, people who are dear to Prabhupada, in the name of, well, I'm serving my guru. And, when you have justification, then it's like, well, I'm justified in criticizing, so it's not an offense. So somebody could justify any kind of criticism. Devotees are doing this, that's wrong, Prabhupada didn't want this. Okay, so maybe that's true. I'm not denying that we don't do things wrong. But there is Vaishnava etiquette and how you go about expressing it and dealing with it. That's important, because otherwise we start fighting. And then when we're fighting, we're offending, and then we suffer. I may not like what you're doing. You may not like what I'm doing. But if we're properly situated as Vaishnavas, then we're going to deal with it. We're going to at least try to deal with it in a more sophisticated, civilized way, according to principles of respect. Now, there's a lot of emotion I have seen and I have felt. There's a lot of emotion around when I see you doing something and you're like, you're my God brother. And I know Prabhupada didn't want that. So it upsets me. How can you do that? And you're setting a bad example and you're preaching this, but this is wrong. So it's like, you're ruining Prabhupada's movement. So there's a lot of this emotion that causes fighting. How could you allow this to go on in ISKCON? You're a leader and you're allowing this to go in your temple. You're ruining ISKCON. This is not what Prabhupada wants. So it's not just you are upset. You're upset because you feel Prabhupada's upset. And that's a very intense emotion. And there can be a lot of anger associated with that. And then we may end up offending another devotee in the name of fidelity to Prabhupada. Sometimes Prabhupada criticized his godbrothers because they were doing things that he understood to be against what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted. So you could call it criticism, but he was pointing that out for us. He's saying, this was a mistake. Like, don't make this mistake. Learn from their mistake. So he points it out. Sounds like criticism. You could even say it sounds like blasphemy, but he was just, my spiritual master wanted this. This is just the history of what happened, but this is what happened. They didn't follow this order. He wanted to form a governing body. The day he left, they picked someone to be guru and head of the institution. It's like, well, that's not what he wanted. So Prabhupada didn't want us to do that. So he said, this was a mistake. This is why it was a mistake. Mm-hmm. So it sounded like Prabhupada was criticizing his godbrothers. And so one of Prabhupada's disciples said something really bad. He said, Prabhupada, are all your godbrothers rascals? Because Prabhupada made these statements. Some of the godbrothers disobeyed Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, wanted to establish an acharya and blah. So it sounds like, they're all bad. At least this devotee was a bit proud, maybe more than a bit. And he said, Prabhupada, are there any of your godbrothers who are all rascals? And Prabhupada was like so upset. Prabhupada had his cane. He stuck his cane in his stomach. He said, you think my Guru Maharaj would initiate rascals? My Guru Maharaj did not initiate any rascals. So it's like in the name of, validating things Prabhupada said in the name of spreading Krishna consciousness, then he thinks he has a right to criticize Prabhupada's godbrothers, and Prabhupada was outraged by it. So, there's like a fine line here. Like, I have a right to criticize because I know Prabhupada wanted something and you're not doing it, or his godbrothers aren't doing it, or their disciples aren't doing it. And I've seen this, and it's really, really bad. And I think people think that they have a right to criticize if they believe that someone is not doing what Prabhupada wanted, or in some way, going against him. And you will find that amongst senior advanced devotees who are deeply humble, they won't do that. Even if it's wrong, they'll deal with it differently. There's an etiquette. Like, so a senior devotee comes, maybe somebody comes from India, senior to me, 90 years old, been a devotee like 80 years. And maybe they say something that it's different from Prabhupada. And I might respectfully say, Maharaj, Prabhupada said, you said this and Prabhupada said that. Why do you think he said that, or what's your understanding? Or I could come and say, Maharaj, what you said is wrong. Prabhupada said this.
So there's a way of communicating too, right?
Yeah,
how you approach.
I think I have a right because he's contradicting my guru, but he's a senior Vaishnava. I'm a junior, so I have to act in accordance with my position. Mm-hmm. Now, if he said something that was like a atom bomb on this temple, or atom bomb on ISKCON, or he offended Prabhupada, that's different. You might have to take a different stand, and just say, Maharaj, what you said is wrong. And if you want to come here and like that, you have to retract that statement, because he said something which is contradicting very important points in the way Prabhupada explained our philosophy, and so you may have to take that stand sometimes. But you would say, Maharaj, with the utmost respect and deference to, but this is wrong, something like that.
Yeah.
And you're willing, and inside you're saying, well, I have to stop this, and I'm trying to do it respectfully, but if I've done it disrespectfully, then I'll take the karma, but I have to stop this, so you might, but you're not in this mood of fault finder. You're trying to navigate within the realm of etiquette. Did that answer your question? I forgot what you asked.
Yeah, no, it is.
You have any questions? Yeah, so
His only question is, what's for breakfast?
yeah, we'll make offering now.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. So it really helped us to understand how to progress from different
Yeah,
stages
well-
to bhava and prema. But the main thing is to avoid the offenses.
Yeah, offenses is the problem. That's what's, why am I going from 0 to 100 in 100 years? Why can't I go from 0 to 100 in 5 years? It's offenses. I'm chanting okay, maybe I'm not chanting offensively, but I'm not chanting purely, which means some offense is there, slight.
Sometimes people may not be aware that that's an offense,
Yeah.
and they might, unless they read or they understand or get guidance,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
might think that, oh, this is what, I mean, that's how probably they have been
Well,
brought
I
up.
think what, the point I made, that when you take something spiritual materially, then naturally you're prone to make offense. So if we just help people understand the spiritual nature of a devotee, of Tulsi, of the deity, of the holy name, of the temple itself, then the likelihood of making offenses is greatly reduced.
There might be a book on offenses.
Yeah, Yeah.
Just to understand,
yeah,
just first stage is realization
yes.
that this is an offense, and then there is a solution to it.
And what's the mentality that's generating that offense?
Yeah.
What it's a mentality, and it's also, it can be a lack of knowledge, and it can be a lack of purity, but understanding also is extremely important, how those offenses work, and just juxtaposing offenses to kripa, because they're just basically, it's like kripa opens up everything beneficial for us to be Krishna conscious, and offenses, it's closed, it just shuts the door. It's like, because we on our own can't be Krishna conscious without mercy. So if you shut the door on mercy, you just lost your opportunity. And then you can still engage in the process, but the process gives mercy. But if you offend Vaishnavas, then there's no mercy.
I remember in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu there is a subject matter about 64 offenses or something.
Yeah, all these little offenses.
Yeah.
So I mean, in that sense, the word offense just means you're doing something that's improper or displeasing to Krishna. But my understanding is a lot of those, they're in relation to deity worship, and they're kind of given for people who thrive on rules and regulations and want to see that the Vaishnavas have lots of rules and regulations, because a lot of those rules Prabhupada didn't follow. But he said, Sanatana Goswami wrote Hari Bhakti Vilas because Smarta Brahmins or others were saying, well, you're bogus. Like, where's your standards? What are your rituals? What are your principles? So, okay, well, right, rituals and principles that modern day Gaudiya Vaishnavas may not follow. Not they follow some, but not necessarily, or they're not necessarily considered that important. Because if you look at what Prabhupada taught, you'll see he always stressed preaching. And if anything ever got in the way of preaching, that's bad, Like one time devotees were on traveling Sankirtan, and do we need deities? And he said, no, just put a Bhagavatam, you can worship that. The Sankirtan's most important. Don't get too involved in deity worship. It'll take away from your Sankirtan. When devotees had Sahajiya tendencies and, wanted to go and hang out with Babajis and Radha Kund and things of that nature, Prabhupada would say, that's going to stop the preaching if you do that. If you try to go too internal and, try to strive for some very high position, which you're not even qualified for, but if you go that direction, you're going to stop preaching. So we could see, what was the ritual that Prabhupada established? Ultimately, the ritual was give Krishna to everybody. And he felt the deity worship was necessary to keep us pure, but it wasn't more important than the preaching. In Hindu temples, that's everything, is the deity, right? And so Jiva Goswami says, if you worship deity, but you don't honor the devotee, that's third class. So we have to look at, when you read the Shastra, you also have to look at, well, what was Prabhupada teaching by his example, and what was he teaching in his lectures? Like, people say, well, the books are the real thing, because that's the law.
Ready? Offering ready? Offering ready? Okay, ठीक.
So, but to understand what Prabhupada's teaching in his books, you listen to lectures and say, well, did he say the exact same thing he said in his book? Because sometimes he'll explain it in a modern context and it sounds different. So, but in your book you said this. But he's explaining that, well, we don't do this, it's not important. Like he said, in Nectar Devotion, it says you should worship Ganesh. And they asked Prabhupada, he said, we worship Lord Nrsingadev. That was time play. I forget why Prabhupada said that we don't do it and why. No, I know why he said it. I don't know why he said that. Rupa Goswami put that. There's a reason. It's there, but it's not applicable to us as Vaishnavas. You want to remove obstacles, you worship Ganesh. No, we worship Lord Nrsingadev. So you may have Ganesh for the popular people, they'll come. You have Lord Ram, popular people, but our Ishtadev is Radha and Krishna. So that's more in the mood of preaching. So you hear Prabhupada speak, and then he clarifies things. So that's important. Sometimes there's all these rules, and you could become a rule fanatic, but you want to understand, well, what's the essential rules? What's most important? Not just because you can be attached to so many rules that Prabhupada himself didn't do, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta didn't do, Prabhupada didn't emphasize. So what Prabhupada is doing in his translations, he's giving the book as he is, the Nectar Devotion, he's giving it, it's a summary study, and a lot of things are not explained directly. Are we supposed to do that? Well, how do you know, where it says we should worship Ganesh, how do you know we don't do that? Well, Prabhupada never established Ganesh deity on any altar anywhere. So then okay, we don't do that. So, so you have to look at what he did and then, and what he emphasized. Otherwise you get sidetracked. Which I think is more of a problem for Indians than Americans, because we don't come with any this is important, or why don't you do this here? I grew up doing this. And what you grew up doing may have just been some karma kanda thing that has nothing to do with bhakti. So then you learn about bhakti, then you learn what's important and why. Because everything in bhakti is about the mood. And so some things may just be like for material benefit, and that's, we're protected by Krishna, by Lord Nrsingadev, we wouldn't do that. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.